How to understand the INFJ brain. That is the topic of today's video. Now, I was inspired to make this video not because I get questions about the INFJ brain, but because I get a lot of questions from INFJs on talking to other people and feeling like they are misunderstood by other people a lot of the time. So that's where this ties into the INFJ brain, because I believe a lot of people do not understand how the INFJ brain works, and INFJs themselves often do not understand how the INFJ brain works. So one of the big problems that this comes down to is miscommunication. Miscommunication that INFJs have with their partners, with their friends, with their family, with their coworkers. And this shows up in a few different forms, but as I said, it almost always is the INFJ feeling very misunderstood, or like the other person isn't getting what they're saying. They're explaining it over and over, they're explaining things in different ways, but they feel like the person's either not listening to them or the person just doesn't get it. Now, this is doubly hard because INFJs don't open up easily. We don't usually share our opinions and our views with people unless we are explicitly asked to weigh in on a situation or to give our input. So when we do open up and actually explain our views to other people, and then we get this reaction where the other person seems really confused, seems like they're not understanding us, or they go blank, they're giving us this very blank expression, they're obviously not following what we're saying, that's really hard for us. We can really feel slighted when other people seem to be checked out, or we can really get irritated by that. Even if it seems like it's not really their fault, they just can't understand what we're saying, that irritation still comes in. This will also happen where we will have a conversation with someone and it seems like they're following, but then later it seems like they don't remember anything that we said. And when we say, oh yeah, I predicted that would happen, or do you remember when I said that it would unfold in that way? And they're like, huh? I don't know what you're talking about. That can be very irritating to us as well. Now, sometimes this is because the other person is just dysfunctional. They really are checked out. They're checked out of life a lot. They're very disconnected from themselves, from others, from reality, and they're really not listening. That's legitimately what's happening. They're just not listening, and they don't just do this with the INFJ, they do this with all the people in their lives. So sometimes that is the scenario. But often, it's really because we think differently than other people. And this can really happen a lot with partners and close friends, people we know that we do share a kinship with them, we are on the same wavelength about a lot of things, but when we try to explain things to them, we're met with confusion. So it's really important to remember, most other types, especially non-intuitive types, they tend to think in a straight line. They tend to think in terms of cause and effect. So this happened, and that caused this to happen. And you can clearly see how the two are connected. You can clearly see that they're functioning in a straight line, that A happened, and that caused B. Or A happened, that contributed to B, and then that caused C. Right? So there's this linear way things are going. Most people consider only one thing at a time or only a few things at a time when they are thinking. And this goes beyond, are you a detail-oriented thinker or are you a big picture thinker? This is really a non-intuitive versus intuitive sort of way that the brain works. Most people are considering one facet of a situation or one thing that happened or that A to B to C cause and effect at one time. INFJs do not think like this. INFJs do not think in a straight line. We are intuitive, and not only intuitive, but we're highly intuitive, so we think in a web. And if you're taking notes, I want you to really underline that. We are thinking in a web. That is the most important point of this entire video. We are thinking in a web. All intuitive types do this, but INFJs do this to the degree where our thought web is much larger than even those of other intuitives. I would say except for the INTJ. The INTJ can really match us on the size of the thought web, but the other intuitive types, not so much. So we think in a web, and the web we're thinking in is very, very large. So when we are communicating with someone else, when we are trying to explain something to someone else, why we see something the way we do, why we think that something's going to happen, how things are connected, we're not communicating one thing at a time to them in a straight line. We're not communicating one thing at a time in terms of cause and effect, which is how most people think and how most people are used to communicating. Instead, we are trying to present the web. And every INFJ does this. We try to present the web. We present the key points that link the whole thing together. So it's like a big spider web. And we're showing this point over here, and this point over here, and this point here, and this point here, and that makes the four corners. And then there are these lines radiating out, and they're connected by this point, and this point, and this point. That's how we think, and so that's what we are trying to present to other people most of the time when we are explaining a situation or we are explaining our theory on something. If we were presenting this visually to people, it would probably make a lot more sense to them. If we were able to carry around like a big whiteboard all the time with us wherever we went, and we were able to draw out, this is what I'm thinking, these are how the key points are connected, that would probably go a long way toward clearing up communication with other types. However, most of the time there is no visual. You are just verbally expressing yourself. You're talking this out with someone else, and so there's no visual to reference. When there's no visual representation as we present the web to other types, it really just does sound like we're talking about random things that aren't connected, because they don't have the INFJ faculty of being able to spot patterns and connect things that are connected but have a hidden pattern. Other people can't do that. Or if they can do that, it's not easy for them like it is for us. So it really does sound a lot of the time like we're just presenting random things to them, or we're going off on tangents, we're going down a rabbit hole as we speak, and they're not really sure how it's all connected. So the key to effective communication with others is, number one, don't try to present the web to non-intuitive people. I know that's hard for INFJs because this is the way we naturally think, but if you are always trying to present the web to people who are not web-based thinkers, you will really only confuse them. If you can bring in the visual element, as I said, that can go a long way, but most of the time that's not feasible and you can't do that in real life. So a lot of the time it's better to just not try to present the web. Definitely don't try to present the web all in one sitting to someone. Most other types, when we show them what we're thinking, when we show them how we're building out a pattern or we're building out a theory, they can get very overwhelmed by that. And a lot of times they lose interest. They don't see the connection, they don't see how everything links up, and so it's not interesting to them. When to us, it's very interesting and we're usually very passionate about it, which adds to the irritation when we feel like we're not being listened to and we're not being taken seriously. The next thing you can do is not stop creating the web, but create the web for yourself. Use your web-based thinking when you are writing stories, putting together psychological theories on the people in your life, figuring out your life purpose, all things that have to do with you. If you do have to explain something to someone else, you can look at the web that you've created, you can present the web to yourself and pull out the key points and then present those key points to someone else in cause and effect form. So I see this, it's linked to this, it causes this, and then this happens, right? So that's like an A, B, C, D, which is a little bit more complicated. But if you can keep the pattern fairly linear and you can present it in a cause and effect form to others and make it really simple, that sometimes will really help with the communication. So only present those simplified points. The last thing, or one of the last things, is a little bit harder to do emotionally. But if you can practice, detach from the outcome of the other person understanding you. Detach from the other person's reaction. If you're working with a coworker or someone in a class group or even a friend of yours, and you say to yourself, I always seem to have communication problems with this person. They never understand what I'm talking about. I see now it's because I'm presenting the web. They can't really get it or they don't really care. Detach from their reaction. They're not going to get it. They are probably not going to care. There's nothing you can do to shift that or manage that dynamic. So that comes back to a choice you have to make. Do you still want to work with this person? Do you still want to be friends with this person? Do you still want to spend that much time with this person? You don't need to door slam them. You don't need to become angry at them, but you can really accept the situation for what it is and say, oh, I'm very intuitive. They're very non-intuitive. We're probably always going to clash in this area of communication. So I'm going to really lower my expectations and I'm going to detach from whatever reaction they have. If they're confused, that's not my problem. Lastly, keep working the web by yourself. For INFJs, the web is very powerful. When we have the freedom to think in webs, to build our own webs, and to really work with our web theories, that's when we can become really invigorated, really enlivened by it. It's a great source of energy for us, and it's a great source of creativity. So there is power in the web. There really is. There's power in web-based thinking, but most other people are not going to get it. So save your energy. You do not need to expend any more energy on trying to make other people get it. Do what you can and do no more. The last thing I will say that can be helpful, if you're like, well, that's great, but I don't want to keep my web to myself. I really do want to share this. I feel like I have a lot of insights. I have a lot of information that comes out of my web-based thinking, and I do want to share that with the world. Focus on putting the web in writing instead of conversation. So when you're in conversation with someone, again, you're pulling out those key points, you're keeping it simple, you're putting it in cause and effect order for others. But in your writing, that's where you can really present the whole web. Whether that's your mind mapping out something out for yourself, or you're writing a very complex novel and it is web-based in the plot and the characters. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I know a lot of you have INFJ brains and come up against a lot of frustration with other non-intuitive types. So this kind of information is really important to understand where you're at, where other people are at, and either try to meet them there or try to back up a little bit and let them have their non-intuitive life and go find greater power in your own intuition. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. I do lots of videos on INFJ stuff and also INFP stuff. So personality type theory, intuition, writing, creativity, all that good stuff. And please subscribe to my newsletter. You get a free book for highly sensitive writers, and you'll get all the updates and notifications on classes I offer, courses I offer, all sorts of stuff. So subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the newsletter. Thanks so much again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.